Okay, hello, good evening, everyone. I wanted to come on here and quickly share with you a public service announcement scam alert message, a PSA scam alert. I wanted to share with you and make it public for the benefit of the public of a situation that occurred with me yesterday on the phone. I received a phone call, actually, I received a voicemail from someone who alleged to represent the local authorities in the county where I live. They said they were calling from the sheriff's department and that I was to call them regarding a legal matter. So, being a bit suspicious of the call, I was like, what could this possibly be about? But anytime law enforcement calls you, you want to respond. So I called the number back that was left on the voicemail, and the person who answered represented himself as a local sheriff or represented like a local sheriff person. And I said, well, what's your name? He said his name was Sheriff Register, which right away sounded kind of strange. And the person was speaking very quickly. The sound was kind of muffled, like some kind of walkie-talkie sound, and so it sounded official-ish, but you don't really know. So I don't want to like drag this whole thing out, but I want to give you some very specific highlights because these are the things where people can get intimidated, they can get afraid when they hear that law enforcement is on the phone, and they may panic. So I put on the side here just a few little tips here of what you should do and not do. For the first thing you want to do is try to stay calm. You may not know what the situation is. So the person was saying to me about missing a court appearance and having been sent a court notice, which I never received any such thing, sent to an address that I no longer live at, and all kinds of things that sounded strange. And so I was asking questions. Well, I'm not really clear in what you're saying. Could you please explain this better to me? And then the person would go on to say, well, I've said it already. I've already told you what I had to say, and you're dragging out the conversation. So I'm like, well, I want to fully understand what this situation is about. And so the more I pushed for clarity, the more muddled it became and the more strange it became. But initially, you want to think it's some kind of scam, but you're not sure. You're not really sure because they're mentioning judge this and this, the other thing, and all these things. And so, kind of pulling pieces and bits from legal jargon, talking about discovery packets and gag orders and all these types of things. It just was totally bizarre. Anyway, the point I want to make is please be aware that these things are happening. I'm sure some of you, many of you may have already received calls of this nature or may not have or may soon will. And if you do, at least you'll be alert to not be anxious if you receive something like this. Definitely ask questions and clearly call the police. I'll get back to that in a moment about that process. But this person told me that I had two options regarding resolving the situation. Either present yourself at the police station and risk being arrested and a whole lot of other nonsense, or guess what my other option was? Would you like to use Apple Pay or Zelle? And at which time I responded, for what? To pay for the citation that was being alleged for the $3,000. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I said, I'll take Zelle. Let's do Zelle, shall we? And they said they're going to give me an access code. And of course, we all know there's no such thing as an access code on Zelle. You either have a cell phone number or an email address, and that's what you use. And so the person gave me a phone number. It was an Orlando phone number and a name of a person. And once they give you that name of a person, obviously somebody out there who's going to receive some money if you send it to them. At which point I told the person that I will be letting my local sheriff's department know that you're on the phone, okay? And finding out who this recipient of the Zelle address is. At which time the person expressed a profanity and hung up the phone. So clearly now being busted in the very act of being a scammer. So at which point I called the police, my local sheriff's department, to let them know what happened, to report the situation. And of course, they said this happens all the time, but it was very good that, of course, I didn't send them any money. However, there are people who do. And the deputy confided that they can ask for any amount of money, and one of the amounts someone had paid was as high as $45,000 a person took out of their savings to pay someone who was intimidating them on the phone. And one of the tactics these people use, they use like they get an attitude. This person was yelling, they were being very aggressive and very trying to be very intimidating in tone and behavior. And sometimes someone who's caught off guard, if someone's speaking to you that way, you could get very caught up in that activity. But once what they say to you makes no sense, then you know that you're in a scam situation. So I'm here to share this story. Hopefully, it will be of benefit to someone who hears it. Share it with someone else who you feel could benefit. And the do's and don'ts, again, I'm going to review the don'ts. Don't panic when you're in these situations. Ask the questions you need to ask. Um, Share this information, like I just said. Let people know if you have experienced something like this or that I'm sharing this with you now. And absolutely do not pay anything. Once the request is made for any form of cash payment, it is an absolute scam immediately, because no government official, no law enforcement officer, no judge or court is going to ask you for any kind of payment on the phone. That is just not going to happen. So right away, you know that it's something amiss. But when I called the police department, they told me that they cannot do anything because no crime has been committed. And I asked the question, well, if someone's impersonating a law enforcement officer, is not that a crime? They said, yes, it is. However, we don't know who it is. We can't find them. We can't trace them. And even with the phone number, there's no way to prove who was the person on the other end. So it's one of those, what do you call them? Crimes without the criminal, if you will. But of course, there is a criminal, but they just cannot really find them. Now, had I paid money, then it would become a crime, and then they would, from there, conduct an investigation. However, they can't do it before. So the point is, just be aware that once you Zelle somebody money, you cannot get that money back so easily at all. So be very careful of Zelling. Apple Pay, if you're in a situation, make very sure who you're sending money to, obviously. But don't ever feel pressure to send some random stranger on the phone who purports to be someone else any form of funds or anything of the sort. And definitely do report it. Even if the police are not in a position to do something, you still want to report it. So at least it's on record that you can get information from them, what to be alert to in the future, and so forth. So I encourage you to be smart, be safe, and be alert. Be really careful when you answer your phone. Who's on the other end, and anything that's suspicious to you, chances are it's suspect, and to be alert. And I have to tell you, I was very kind of like thrown off guard in terms of just the whole thing that had happened and the way it was happening. I was like, what in the world is this? And they're throwing all these things at you, and you're like, what? So I'm like, this is very confusing. I don't know what you're talking about, so let's slow it down. Let me understand. I started to write out what this person was saying, and it became clear that something was definitely not right. And so anyway, some people who are more familiar with this may have recognized it as a scam immediately. Some people end up paying $45,000. So I don't take it for granted where someone may fall on the spectrum of understanding how to deal with these types of scam situations. But definitely, I don't take it lightly, so much so that I am coming on here to share this with whomever can benefit. Okay, I felt it was very necessary to do so, because if it disturbed me, chances are it will disturb someone else, and more importantly, that it not cost you your life savings or anything close to it. So hopefully this will be beneficial to you, and share it with someone again who you feel could really benefit. Okay, thanks for listening, and take care. Bye. Bye 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 bye. I went on longer than I thought, but I needed to explain it. Okay, bye bye.